Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel connecting Celtic fans all over the world, from those in distant lands watching from afar, to those for whom Celtic is their local club and has played a huge part in their stories, and they in it. Speaking of which, today's special guest, well, I was going to say, as you can see, but I won't say that, is Matt McGlone. Matt is currently struggling in the backstage with his mic and camera, and we expect him to put in an appearance at some stage. Hopefully he'll be visible and audible. Otherwise, you're going to be watching Emergency Tech Panic live on air. So that's going to be fun for everyone. Right, well, who is here with us? We have Stephen in Australia. Stephen, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Gav. Thanks for that introduction there. Never work with children, animals, and malcontents from the 1990s, as the old saying goes. So hopefully we get it sorted out soon.
Well, we have our fair share of malcontents from the 1990s here as well. One who mightn't come into that category really is Paul. You're not a malcontent, are you, Paul?
I've been known to be malcontent occasionally. But yeah, no, I've stepped into the breach. So I don't know. Do you want me to hang around when Matt gets on? Or
hang around.
Okay, I'll hang around. There you go. Maybe five's a crowd, but there you go. So yeah, good to be on.
And Jerry in Singapore. How's it going, Jerry?
Not bad, Gav. Not bad. I think Matt might have a couple of malcontented decades on us, to be honest. But yes, I can certainly remember the 90s through probably an alcoholic haze, but I can remember the 90s for sure.
Well, he's currently trying on a different computer, so that's exciting. I'll keep you informed as I hear any progress. This was to have been the menu. Coming up first, Matt Chat. Instead, that's just chatting about Matt, not to him. And then we're going to talk about whether this is a broken window. Are we people getting a bit ahead of themselves already, jumping up and down and claiming this is a disaster and a sense of deja vu? Followed by Celtic socials, but we'll have to rearrange those. Not quite 3-2-1, but 2-1-3. So let's talk about the window first. Guys, I'm sure you've been watching all the Celtic YouTube channels with people speculating about this, that, and the other. What do we know that's happened so far, Stephen?
Well, not a lot really. We've had a few confirmed departures, a few rumoured departures, and no one really coming in the door. The sort of very first sort of solid-ish rumour we have is sort of circulated today, and that was for Nicholas Kuhn, the right winger from Rapid Vienna. So that seems to be gaining traction. And would seem to be going to be the first move of the window in the inward direction. But really, it's been really quiet. There's not been a lot of rumours of substance. A bit of nonsense about Jordan Henderson floating around, but that's just probably best ignored. It's pretty much becoming a bit very similar to windows of the past. And we all know how these windows have ended. They've ended in disappointment or with scrambling around in the last few days. So I don't think it's over. I don't think it's overdoing it to be a bit concerned right now. But there is still time left to get some guys in.
Yeah. Now the Nicholas Kuhn is a bit of a deja vu from even the summer, where you have to wonder to yourself why the club seems to have very different priorities than the fans when it comes to what is needed to be improved. Paul, I imagine you're going to say there's plenty of time. We're just not broadcasting it. There's a lot of work going on in the background. Keep your panties on.
Well, once bitten, twice shy, Gav. I'd love... So rational me says that hopefully that's going on in the background. There's 20 days to go. But it has been a bit of a slow out the blocks. Although, from what I can gather, a few other people doing a lot of work in the background. It's coming into early evening in WA, and the sun's hitting through the window there. That there's not a massive amount of movement across the window in Europe generally. Certainly, those that have been moving for pretty big numbers. which most of those would be outside of kind of where we would expect to be operating, maybe where we'd hope to be operating, but not where we would expect. So if you look at it from that point of view, the tree is going to have to shake a bit, bigger moves happen further up, and then potentially the moves happen further down the food chain. I think I didn't have a huge amount of optimism for a lot to happen this window. I've said for a while that I think the majority of it that we probably need to get over the line will likely be loans to plug a gap. Maybe loans to buy, but maybe even just loans for a 6-month period to get us over the line. Particularly with like Asia Cup and other sort of injuries across the squad and the usual, it's a difficult time to do business. So it's not inspiring, not panicking, kind of see how we go. What I see is a few drifting off rather than coming in. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that the Portuguese fullback seems to have just dropped off. I think they wanted 4 mil. I think we said no, and there hasn't been much contact, I think, since November. So it doesn't look like that's going to go anywhere. And to me, that if that's the case, then that's not the end of the world. Like, he sounds like he's a bit of a taller version of Greg Taylor, but I'm not convinced he's a massive upgrade for another 3 or 4 million quid. So
listen, as we talk about this window, Paul, can we give you an opportunity to do something about yours? Because you're looking positively biblical there with the shafts of light streaming over you.
That's a wee bit better. The window's down, so there's not much I can do. It's I've tilted the screen a little bit. There you go.
So with that biblical reference, we move to Jerry.
I thought that was a path to Damascus there that was being lit up, and we were just going to get a flash and we'd signed our first player of the window, but sadly not. I think when I was last on and said, what do we expect from the window, I said I expected us to get rid of a bunch of dead wood. I think that's in process right now. I think that will continue, hopefully, to get some of the folk off the payroll. And I also said that I didn't think we'd add more than 2 or 3 players to the squad in this window, and I think that's what will happen. Whether Kuhn's an upgrade to what we've got right now, I don't know. I haven't spent enough time looking at him. Although we do need some coverage, as the guys said. I mean, the Asia Cup, obviously, we're going to be missing players at least for the first couple of games after the winter break. And I think Brendan's been fairly consistent in saying that he's building this team over the course of the next few windows, and his belief is that it's not easy to get the quality that you require in this January window. And a number of the positions, and probably the obvious ones, I think that we all believe need to be upgraded or supplemented: goalkeeper, left back, etc. I don't think anything will happen there until the summer window. So, like all of us, would like to see us signing players sooner rather than later. But again, I think to Paul's point, I suspect that a couple of these will be plug-ins till the end of the season, be loans till the end of the season, so to get us across the line. So let's see. Not overly despondent right now, but come back to me in 2 weeks and see how nervous I feel then.
Yeah, I'm quite despondent about the chances of Matt joining us here. As you can see, I'm feverishly responding to him and trying to see what's going to happen. But I can't call him. We're on air. Oh, this is fun. Right. So that's Nicholas Kuhn. There's a couple of comments here about him. Let's rely more heavily on comments than usual in this emergency situation. The German guy is a winger striker, says Martin. He can play across all day position. Sinclair style player, and we need to get rid of players. A lot more than bring in loads of players. A striker being the one key. Well, that's true. We need to get rid of players. That's for sure, but it doesn't make us any better. What does make you better is when you bring in quality. And I'm going to attempt to do that right now. Matt McGlone, are you ready?
There he is.
Where have you all been? I've been here for 10 minutes.
Very nice of you to join us, Matt.
Nice to see you all.
And the good news is we can hear you and see you, so we don't need to panic with lighting and things like that. All right, so listen, we were talking about players. Let's change gears, shall we? Or shall we just finish off the player chat and then go back to talking about Matt? Matt, you can just join in with your tuppence worth on the transfer window so far. All we've done is discuss Nicholas Kuhn and how that seems to be gaining traction, that particular transfer. How about Rocco Vata? How do we feel about him? Matt, you can start with Rocco Vata.
The only time I've seen Rocco in a Celtic strip is when he's come on and made fleeting appearances as a substitute. I was also over in Ireland in September, and I know his mother, and we went to the game in Cork where he played against San Marino, I think it was. And he looked a player to me who was worth keeping, worth developing. But we're all reading newspaper reports. But as far as I know, back at the end of the last transfer window in September, Celtic had made it clear to the family that they wanted to keep the player.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Because we rejected deals, didn't we? We rejected
they rejected 2 deals. I think one was from Italy and one was from Nottingham Forest. And the family were certainly assured at that time that Celtic wanted to keep the player. So we might just be seeing paper talk at the minute. Who knows? I would think, considering some of the people we've seen coming into the team this season, that Rocco Vata is certainly worth keeping and certainly worth giving a go to. He deserves a run in the team. I think what happened when Brendan came in, he was looking at what he had for the first team and didn't want to look at the younger guys till he had settled on who he had, and then he would look at the younger boys then. So I think that was the situation that I was led to believe at the end of the last transfer window.
You don't think he's just got tired of not getting a sniff and he wants to play football somewhere else?
Well, yeah, possibly, because, I mean, every young player wants to play, and, if you think you're good enough, that's the way you should feel, because you shouldn't ever be downed. You should think you're good enough to get into the first team. So therefore that gives you good ambition. So he might be getting tired, but we don't know what's been said behind the scenes. The club might be saying to him, listen, we want to keep you. Just be patient. The manager's just come in. He hasn't had a chance to look at the young guys yet. But you're one we want to keep. If I was him, that's what I would want to hear. If I didn't hear that and they said, we don't think you're going to be getting near the team for another 12 to 18 months, then I think if it was my son, I would maybe say you should look elsewhere if other people are interested in giving you a game.
Okay. Now, there's not very much other news really for us to deal with. Now, that could be because there's nothing happening, or it just could be because the club are being a bit more tight-lipped than others. Who knows? Quistgarden, the guy from Brøndby, that seems to have the door seems to have closed on that, with Brøndby shutting up shop supposedly till the summer.
Well, again, that's all paper chat. I mean, until we hear from somebody who's actually dealing with the situation, I would just regard that as paper chat. Papers will print things to get clicks and get headlines. Whether they have facts to back it up is a different matter.
Sure, but we had to talk about something while we were waiting for the star performer to arrive. So this is what we went with.
Well, I'll tell you what, see that link you sent me? If that link had worked the first time, I'd have been on at the right time.
It's your fault, Gav.
I've had to swap computers, and I'm in a foreign land at the minute, so I don't actually have a battery of computers to jump onto, but I did have a spare one, which my friend had, and he helped me out.
Which foreign land are you in, Matt?
I'm in southern Spain.
Oh, nice.
For 2 months.
Very nice.
And is that with a view to a permanent move?
No, I've just got a couple of health issues, and I've got a big appointment coming up, medical-wise, in March, and I just wanted to get myself as prepared as possible.
There's a bit of negativity coming in from the chat, from the comments. Transfer window has been boarded over. Dear, dear. Okay, well, yeah, so there's not a lot of talk from our end. What about, Stephen, let's come to you and talk about what you're seeing from the other side of the city. Where do you stand on all this Batshuayi talk? Is that a load of nonsense or a sign of their intent that makes you slightly worried?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two sides to it, really. One side is, I think it's clear that they're trying to improve their team. Now, clearly, they should be fishing in a completely different pool from us. But the concern is that they're perhaps not, and we're being linked with a lot of the same players. Now, as Matt says correctly, a lot of that's probably paper talk. You know how the press like to link us and them with the same player when it's really only them that's interested, and it makes us look bad if they do eventually sign them. So, look, I'm not particularly worried by anybody they've signed, but I think you can't fault them for trying. We've been pretty inactive in the market. We had a pretty poor window in the summer, as they did as well. But they look as if they're trying to put that right, albeit with a lot less resources than what we have. And we really shouldn't be looking at the same players they are, and I hope we're not.
The thing is, Stephen, without a shadow of a doubt, they will throw everything to win this league. They'll throw everything at it that they've got. They'll borrow money that they don't have. They'll overspend in players. They'll do their very best. We seem to be a wee bit sort of snobbish on that front, that we've got lots of money and we'll do it in our own time. The time is now. We need sorted. We need strengthened. We've got a league to win here. And, the increased riches that the Champions League will offer next season with 8 games, 4 at home, 4 away, will obviously need preparation for a side that can go into it rather than what we've seen this season, which is completely unprepared for the Champions League. But first of all, we have to get into it by winning this league. And no doubt about it, they will throw everything at it, even things they don't have.
Well, this is the point that Martin raises here. They can't afford him, and apparently the reports were rubbished overnight. You see this? According to this, he's on like 61 grand a week. It's like $250,000 a month. How on earth are they going to bridge that gap?
You never know.
I think
you never know. And sorry, I was just going to say that they threw the kitchen sink at in the 10 in a row season, right? I mean, they went. I mean, our board were absolutely gormless that season. Did nothing to. I mean, we sleepwalked our way to losing that the championship in the 10 in a row season. There was no plan, no strategy around the board. Thought that we would just walk to 10 in a row. They threw everything they could at it. Took money from. They had their begging balls out round the globe trying to get money in, and they will do that. I mean, they've got previous obviously doing that. So I agree with Matt. We certainly can't have a repeat of that 10 in a row or not 10 in a row season, COVID championship, whatever you want to call it.
Because that's the worry that this window is starting to cause in people's minds, isn't it? Here's a name that you'll recognise from Celtic Down Under, Andrew Galea, not another winger, surely. And I saw Paul John Dykes putting up a post about if he comes, we're overflowing with wingers. We're going to have to get a lot of them out, or a few of these boys on loan. But like I say, until something's... Go ahead.
I think a lot of the angst around the window is due to the fact that the myth of the not being able to do business in January was well and truly detonated during Ange's spell at the club, when we got players in pretty early in January. In fact, some players were signed even before the window opened, and were ready to start training on the 1st of January. So I don't think it's necessarily true to say that you can't sign players in January or it's difficult in January. Of course it's difficult. It's not easy to sign players at any time. This is a professional sport, and everybody wants to succeed. So it's never easy, but you've got to just do what you need to do. And so far, and I think it's scar tissue from previous experiences which show us that when windows generally start like this, there's very, very seldom is there a flurry of big signings at the end of the window, and most normally we're left disappointed, and that is the concern for me at the moment.
You're giving everyone anxiety there, Stephen.
I think when Brendan came in, there was an excuse for Brendan not getting his own guys in last season, because a lot of the transfers had been prepared with other clubs that players you might have wanted. So I think I gave him the excuse that he would play with players that Celtic had sort of on the books down the line but not signed. And we seem to have done that. But some of them are not worth it. Some of them might not have been given a chance. So as far as Brendan's concerned, I think the January transfer window and the next one is when he has to really make his mark and make serious signings. In fact, this one, he has to. I'll lose a bit of faith in Brendan if he just goes willy-nilly with, being given players that were maybe recommended to the club and he just sort of gave the nod to them. He has to go for his guys this month.
Absolutely. Okay, and listen, on that note, let's move the conversation on to focus on our star guest of the week, and we'll do that by watching a little video which sort of sets the scene for the conversation we're going to have. There you go. 30 years ago, Matt. You don't look a day older than back then. Does that bring back all the memories of that time?
Certainly feel a bit more worn out, I'll tell you. Yeah. Well, 30 years, it's hard to believe it. Next March the 4th, coming up, less than 2 months. Yeah, momentous days, change was needed. I always took the viewpoint that the supporters held the key, although the supporters were always disregarded. I felt we held the key because we held the finance, and instead of the club just taking us for granted and treating us any way they wanted, the support had a voice, and all I tried to do was with the four other guys, Brendan, Davey, Colin and John, all fantastic guys, heroes, stood up, did it when it mattered.
Well, that was going to be my first question. Matt, can you summarise what state the club was actually in? What was going on at boardroom level? And why there was a need for an action group like yours?
I was at a supporters do around about maybe August 93. And somebody had approached me and said to me, Matt McGlone, you do the fanzine, I said, yeah, and he said, I've got information that Celtic are in serious financial trouble and could actually get out of business. Now, at that time, if you cast your mind back, 1993, people never really sort of believed that could happen. I mean, even now, some people, after seeing what's happened to Celtic, which didn't quite go as far down the lane as what happened to Rangers, who were liquidated, people always thought that Celtic were too big for this to happen. But the realisation really kicked in that it was in a financial perilous state. And all we tried to do in days prior to the internet, and it was really handing out leaflets and appealing to people and talking to people and spreading the word, was that the supporters had to stand up and take a stand here and say, we're here, we're not accepting this. And it was a very, very difficult time. I mean, it was a very stressful time. You learned on your feet how things went, and we created things literally on the drop of a hat to try and keep the pressure up. I basically put an advert into the Sunday Mail, I think it was, the size of a small postage stamp, and I said, if you care about your club, Celtic, turn up at the City Halls tomorrow night at 7:30. And about 30 people turned up, and a lot of them were shouting at me, and it was quite a shock, because I think the notion in those days was if you said anything against Celtic, then you couldn't be a Celtic supporter. Being a concerned fan didn't really come into a lot of people's heads. You had to be anti-Celtic if you said anything against Celtic. There was a lot of shouting from the crowd and shouting me down, etc. And I thought, I don't really know if I could go through this again. But Brendan Sweeney was there, and he came forward, and to this day, Brendan, I was just talking to him the other day there. He said, let's try and do this again, and we did it again. Another advert, and then Davey had got hold of his pal at school, Davey Cunningham, another guy that stood tall and did the business. And we arranged another meeting at the City Halls, and I parked my car on Parnage Street and walked over Argyle Street up Candle Rigs. I sees all these fans in hats and scarves queuing down the street right round the corner. And I'm thinking, oh no, I can't believe it. We're double booked the City Halls. There was about maybe 4 rooms in the City Halls, going from a 35, 50-seater to an 800 to a 400 or whatever, up to 2,500. And I thought I had booked an event. There was another Celtic rally on. I went up to the front of the queue and I said to the guy, excuse me, mate, I've booked a room here for 50 people. He said, get to the back of the queue, son. And I said, I've actually made a booking here. And he said, what's it called? And I said, Celts For Change. And he says, that's what this queue's for here. Mm-hmm. And I think if I was to think of a pivotal moment where I think this could work, I turned around and I saw all these people standing there. So I went in and saw the Johnny and said to him, listen, see that wee room I've booked for 50 people? You need to give us a bigger room. You need a bigger boat here. And he got us another room, and I think he said 400 seater or something. And then he said the cost is £190 for this. We didn't have any £190. So I just thought, don't back down here, just go forward and we'll get the £190. So we'd asked people if they could put, once the people came in, we asked them if they could put money into buckets, which they did. And that meeting really took off, probably 350 people there, and we appealed, and we had a sort of bigger committee then. There's a picture I think you showed earlier on of the first meeting where I'm standing up addressing the crowd, and I think David Cunningham was there, and Brendan Sweeney was there, and David Watt, who left the early doors because we had a disagreement about when the boycott should take place. He wanted it right away, and I said, no, we have to let people know who we are. We have to let the fans understand that we're genuine fans trying to do something. We had to get them to believe in what we were doing.
Yeah.
So David, good guy, but David Watt left that night because I'd said I wasn't going to run the group if we're going to go for a boycott right away, because it would have been a disaster. You can't ask people after 3 or 4 weeks to boycott the club. They have to know who you are. We done loads of campaigning. We actually did a rally on the boat from Larne to Belfast, which was crazy, to tell you the truth, at 7:30 in the morning. It was the only time we could address some of the Irish fans, and that's the time we were given. And the boat was going up and down the high seas, rocking all over the place. Half the crowd were rocking all over the place. Some of them were trying to jump on the stage, pull a mic off me, and it all seemed pretty good natured, but we then rallied and demonstrated, and we were called malcontents. We were regarded as people who came from peripheral housing schemes in Glasgow. We were slaughtered, we were rumoured, we were smeared. A lot of this came from people who were friends of the board. But I said to the guys through all the tough times, we have to stand tall here. We have to go for victory. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe in the club. And there was various things like going to the bank, having rallies in Dundalk, where 62 Irish Celtic Supporters Club turned up in Dundalk. We went there and we did the thing. All we're doing is appealing and rallying and trying to say to fans, this is what we have to do here. And there was 62 clubs there, and there was 61 delegates from the 62 supporters clubs in Ireland, and they gave us a unanimous backing. So that was major.
Can you tell us how bad was the state of the club's finances? And
the club, yeah.
Right.
So the club, unbeknown to us, had a director on it called David Smith. He was just seen as a businessman. People didn't really look into his background. Who is this guy, David Smith? David Smith, as it turned out at the end of the day, was popped in there by the Bank of Scotland to look after their money. So the Bank of Scotland were really given a running commentary of what was going on inside the club. Now, I think that's quite serious, because you've got an outside interest having an inside influence. And we didn't actually know that at the time. Just thought David Smith, he's been popped on, he's a businessman. So the finances of the club, when Ferris came in and took over, the finances were £6 million debt. Now, that might not seem a lot of money in today's world, but 30 years ago, it was quite a lot of money. And that debt was just mounting and mounting. My concern was that the bank would step in and take over. Now, therefore, if the bank step in and take over, you've got this massive outside interest controlling what happens to Celtic next. We got banners and things made up, and all the money we got came from the crowd. We put buckets round asking fans to help pay for the banners, asked fans to help pay for demonstrations where we would have placards and things like that. We get posters put up all over Glasgow about 6 feet by 4 feet saying, wanted for gross mismanagement. We plastered these all over Glasgow and the faces of the directors on it. How to make yourself unpopular.
Jerry, let's take a question from Jerry. We've all going to have a chance to ask a few questions, so we'll throw the mic to Jerry.
How unpopular do you think you got through that period, Matt? I mean, what was the most confronting experience you had through that in terms of, did you ever fear for your own safety, for example, through that period?
Several times I was warned that people knew which school my kids went to. They told me what pub I drank in. They told me the street I lived in. I had confrontations probably most days of the week. and life was very difficult.
Not a lot
Stephen,
of fun. I do fondly remember. When we were walking up to the stadium, the first thing we ever did was buy Once a Tim. That was people trying to sell match programs and stuff like that, and or the Celtic View, and we never ever bought any of those. So that's it.
Jerry, the Once a Tim back in the day was put together basically on a kitchen table, chopping up pictures out of newspaper, pasting them on, typing words out on a word processor, and getting it come out the other side. Everything was done very basic, but I think if you have the spirit, it doesn't matter what year we're in, whether we have internet or not. If you have the spirit and the determination that the club don't die, that's all that matters. That's all that mattered to us. We went to the bank. We get placards saying Bank of Scotland stop backing up an insolvent club, things like that. So we would call for rallies and demonstrations, and we would be at the city halls probably every fortnight on a Sunday afternoon. And the lads were all giving up their time. The lads had all had wives and children and commitments and jobs and everything that we have in daily life. And one of the meetings, there's probably about 400 or 500 at these meetings. On the Sunday, at one of the meetings, I suggested that we go to the bank, and we assembled 350 people on a midweek afternoon in George Square. The Bank of Scotland head office there was where the Counting House pub is now, which you might be familiar with, Jerry. I know you and I seem to bump into each other in pubs and never know each other.
We do. Yeah, indeed.
So we went to the bank and with 300 and 50 outside or so. And Davy Cunningham and I went into the bank and asked to speak to the manager. And girl sort of looks you up and down from your toe to your head, saying, "Who are you?" And I actually was a customer of the bank at the time. I said, "I'm a customer. I'd like to speak to the manager." And 2 or 3 times she rebuffed me and was going to have us removed from the bank, etc. And then I said to her that I told her what it was about, but she was just a young girl at the front. It wasn't her fault or problem or job. But I wanted her to take a message back to who would maybe speak to us. We basically said that if they didn't speak to us, then I would ask every one of the 350 outside to come in and open up a bank account with a pipe for £1, and then queue again and come back in and close it down. The idea was to cause total disruption to the bank. And within about 2 minutes, Davey and I were in the manager's office having a cup of tea and a custard cream.
Very good. Here's a comment from Alex Birrell. Matt, did you have any contact with Fergus at that time? And that's connected. Hold on, that's connected to a question I think that Stephen wants to ask. Stephen?
Yeah, before I ask my question, I think it's good to get this opportunity to say thanks to Matt. As someone who was there on the ground at that time, I understand what a difficult period it was for all the fans, and a very difficult period for the club. And you guys really stood up when somebody needed to stand up. So it's great to get this opportunity to just say thanks to you and all the guys for everything you've done. I know I witnessed firsthand some of the abuse that you guys got from your fellow fans. Some of it was fairly disgraceful. So it's just a magnificent thing you've done for the club and something you should be really proud of, particularly since the club is now, the premier club in the country. So just thanks for that. But yeah, my question was much the same as the one that came up in the comments. How much contact did you have with Fergus on a personal level, and what was your impressions of him?
Well, we didn't know Fergus when we first started out. Fergus probably came into the scenario around about maybe sometime in November, and running the fanzine, I tried to get a hold of him to get an interview in the magazine, which I thought would be a bit of a scoop to get a guy like that. Because remember, all of the things that the fans are reading, we have to forget about the instant access we've got today with podcasts like this and instant news. As soon as you turn on your phone, the only things that fans read, which was fan orientated and wasn't given out by Celtic or by the press and media, was a fanzine. So it was quite sort of dated, as it were, as in its time scale, it comes out and then, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't instant. So to get an interview with Fergus, I sort of made it my sort of prime aim, and I kind of tracked him down, and I managed to get an interview with him. I think it was at his solicitor's office in Carlton Place, I think it was. And he was a kind of guy's attitude was like, who are you? What do you want? How can I help you? What do you do? Fergus doesn't have time for small talk. Like, you walk in, it's the middle of winter, you go, oh, cold today, isn't it? You just don't do that with him. So managed to get the interview, and we wanted to get a feel of him. So through the fanzine, we got a feel of what his aims were. Because at the same time, you had good campaigns running with Willie Hawkey, Michael McDonald and Gerard Weisfield, who also had good plans for the club. So as far as I was concerned, we were back in the end of the day, first over the line to get the board out and to get the club on an even footing and get the debt paid. That was the main thing. So it was probably around about the November time, I think, we first came into contact with Fergus. But Fergus never came and stood in any of our platforms, and neither did Brian Dempsey up until the victory rally, which was 3 days after the takeover. That meeting was actually arranged 2 weeks earlier as another rally to sort of try and muster support. So Brian and Fergus came up on the stage that night. So throughout the entire campaign, nobody stood on our stage apart from us who was of any influence. We wanted players. I remember still very friendly with Paul McStay, Paul's fan club from the 1980s. And I'd asked Paul to come up with some of the players to show a bit of support. Because as far as everybody else is concerned, we're just guys in the street. We're not people who had clout as far as we could bring on a player or somebody of importance like maybe Brian Dempsey or somebody. We didn't have that. Although we were in talks with these people, but they wouldn't stand on the stage until it was done. And Paul told me afterwards that they were at the stage where they were considering coming onto the stage in their club blazers and backing us, just towards when it finally did come to a head in March the 4th. So whether that would have happened, I don't know, but he'd said that. I also have to remember that it's very difficult for people like Paul and the players who are employed by the club to stand on the stage. There's not many people who stand in defiance of their own employer.
And just as a follow-up to that, Matt, what so on that night, on the night in question, when Brian Dempsey gave the victory speech and said the Rebels have won on the steps of Celtic Park, were you guys inside Parkhead that night? Were you part of the sort of the events that were unfolding, or were you watching from the outside like the rest of us?
No, we were outside. I was at Celtic Park at 5:30 a.m. that morning because I'd heard the night before. Try to think, I can't remember who phoned me with the news because there's no mobiles those days. It's your house phone. It was going mad at the time. But I was told that it was going to happen tomorrow. That the boycott had happened 2 days earlier. And it was really difficult. I'll just give you a bit about the boycott before we get into how we find out, because there's a lead up to events here. The boycott crowd was something like 8,225. And I was never trusting of the old board of what stunt they would pull next. So I asked the guys how much we had left in the bank account, and we had about maybe 800 or 900 quid left. And this was getting used for things that we would need through the campaign, rallies, posters, demonstrations, paying for halls. So I hired a company called Scott Search Limited. And what they were a market research company. And they said, asked them if they could put a person on the gate, every single gate getting into Celtic Park, if they could give me a count of the next day of how many people went in and what gate, etc., and how many away fans went in. And out that 8,200 odd, there was about 1,500 Kilmarnock fans. So you're basically looking at maybe people that were just season ticket holders at the time it went. remember doing a broadcast live with ITN at lunchtime down in London that day. I'm up here, obviously, and I did the live broadcast, and the guy said to me, surely this will hurt the club. Like, no, the club's never been hurt before, something like that. And I said, no, I says, the people that are hurting this club are the board, who are forcing the fans. These fans love the club. We're trying to save the club. We're not trying to hurt the club. And so I said at that time that each and every fan should examine their own conscience as to whether they want to go to the game the game the boycott was called for. Now, that stands today as well, because who am I to say to people, you can't go and see your team? I can't. What I can say is, could you think about it and think that this one action might be pivotal and could actually make a huge difference? And that's the line that we went. We were never bombasting people and directing people, and you must do this, you must do that. We were appealing to them constantly. The approach all the time was to appeal to the supporters. Myself, the 4 other die-hard guys that did it, were appealing to them to examine their own conscience and see if they could do it. And the next day, Celtic came out and said there was something like 12 or 13,000 there. And I'm sitting here with this information that amount of people weren't in the ground. And the BBC and STV, they were always, on the case, seeing what was happening, and had built up good relationships. And Hazel Irvine, who was a broadcaster up here at the time, she's down BBC London now. She phoned me up and she says, I tipped her off that we were in Scott Search, counting the people going in, the fans. And I told her that there was about 8,225 odd and 1,500 Kilmarnock fans. She says, can you prove that? Because the board are saying 12, 13,000 were at the game. I said, yeah, I've got a official document here from Scott Search. And that evening I was on BBC News holding up the document. And the next day the bank called the club in, and the rest is history.
Very good. Well, you talk about your conscience there, or appealing to people's consciences. My conscience wouldn't be clear if I didn't give Paul a chance to speak. So, Paul, do you want to come in with a question at this juncture?
Yeah, well, I hadn't prepped one, so I was supposed to be a backup, Matt, but I stayed on when you were a little bit late. So I guess bringing it back up to date and sort of closing the circle, what are your views on where we stand now? Obviously, the club's in a hugely much stronger position, but there's still a bit of unrest between the support and the board, and that's probably healthy. But where do you think we are with all of that at the moment? What's your view on that?
Well, I think the club is basically run by one man. Although we have a board there, and I think major decisions are made by Dermot Desmond. And Dermot Desmond's man on the ground has always been Peter Lowell. And Peter is back as chairman. And I'd like to think that Michael Nicholson, who did seem to become quite a shining light, a very positive force as chief executive when Ange was there, Peter's back now, and I don't exactly know what influence he's got there, but as a chairman, he should be in the building on match day. So the person that runs the club now is Michael Nicholson, who seemed to be flying under Ange, and we were getting transfers done really quickly and well, and he was working in unison. When the chief executive, Mackay, left after 70 odd days, Ange got his agent, a guy called Frank Trimboli, who I think's Australian. You guys might know him a wee bit. Frank Trimboli was a worldwide agent who works and was a director, I think, with the base CCA, I think they're called, base management. And they have a worldwide scope with players that you can sign and etc. So that seemed to work quite well now. Peter Lowell's son's in there now, Mark Lowell, and he is the sort of director of football. I'm not sure his title, director of football, does the deals. So things seem to have stuttered a bit, I think, in the last 8 or 10 months as far as players that have come in. I only hope that Michael Nicholson has got his own head and he's not influenced by anybody else. And we start getting a shift on transfers. I'd be really mega disappointed in Brendan Rodgers if he came back under the same deal that he had the last time, which seemed to be one of the reasons that he left. Why would you come back to this exact same situation if it's rumoured that other players are getting signed and you just didn't really scout them? So I'd be mega surprised if Brendan Rodgers put himself back into that position. I just can't believe anybody would do that. So hopefully this month we'll see him get some decent players and it will be his guys.
That's an interesting answer, Matt. You're answering like a fan talking about the current situation. I kind of expected you to say, yes, we've got these little issues going on at the moment, but my goodness, we're in such a different position from those dark days back then, and we should be, more grateful for the stability that the business has and all this sort of stuff. Is that also true?
No, my answer is what I gave you.
All right.
I guess we'd say, obviously, we are in a much better position. The times what Matt's been talking about is, as bad as it gets. But we shouldn't just go, well, either or. We've got to push on and continue to look to be better, and we certainly can be from where we are at the moment.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. It's not a neither or. I mean, part of what you said there, Gav. We are grateful for where we are, and remember, it's the supporters' money that got it there, and the dedication and commitment that the fans give. Buying shares, I'm a shareholder, I'm a season ticket holder. Go to as many away games as I can get my hands on. So therefore, everything that's put into Celtic has been put into by the supporters, because directors don't put money into the club. We don't have a sugar daddy like the Jack Walker at Blackburn. You remember him? Mm-hmm. He was just bankrolling the club. Dermot Desmond doesn't bankroll Celtic. He just officiates as to what's going on there as the sort of as a chief shareholder. So yeah, Celtic are in a good place, but I thought I was more talking about where we are as a club, as a team, and where the team can improve, because I think back then can't be compared to anything that's happening now. What we are talking about here is improving the current side, which I think we're probably in agreement with. 3-class players would do that.
Yeah.
We've got quite an excess of players, but I think 3-class, oven-ready players, not projects, not guys who are bringing in hoping they'll do well, but guys who have done it elsewhere, and they are out there. They're definitely out there, and you don't have to pay megabuck to get them. But we have cash in hand at the bank, 74 million, I think the last account showed. We're not exactly strapped. As I said, across the street, they don't have any money like that at all, but they will throw everything at winning this league. It's time we wakened up a wee bit.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. It'll be interesting to see, Michael Nicholson, I thought was a breath of fresh air the first couple of seasons. And under Bankier, who was chairman at the time, certainly seemed to have free rein to go and do what he did. A great relationship with Ange. Obviously, he brought Mark Lowell in during that period. And, again, Ange's second year signings, etc., didn't, obviously weren't all successful, but seemed to be the same type of player. And this last window, we just seemed to revert back to where we'd been several seasons before. So, God willing, Brendan does get those 2 or 3 quality players, Matt, that you talked about. Whether that is just to see us through till the end of the season and make sure we do get to the pot of gold that the Champions League is going to give us next season. Be interesting. I mean, I said this on a show recently. I was when Ange brought the team down to Australia, I was in a boat with a bunch of the execs, and Bankier was saying, "Oh, you know, just wait. The new chairman's going to get these boys sorted out." Nicholson and crew were on the boat as well, and I literally could not believe it. About 5 weeks later, when Lowell was announced as the chairman, I was like, "What the fuck?" I couldn't believe it.
Well, you know, Dermot is the guy that calls the shots, and
Absolutely.
If he says Peter Lawwell is going to be the chairman, the chairman will be Peter Lawwell. We have to look at it that way. People say to me, "Oh, just bring any kind of money from the Arab states or whatever," and I'm thinking, sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for, you know. So, off the park, we're obviously in a very good state. The team, as we've all discussed here, needs nipped and tucked a bit with 3 or 4 quality players, left back, centre forward, goalkeeper, centre back maybe. As I say, I try and put my trust and faith in somebody that's tried and tested and knows what they're doing. Now, whether we like it or not, when Brendan came back, you know, there's huge groundswell of opinion that he didn't want him back. I don't know how you guys felt throughout the world there, but the fact that he was back, I had to say, right, okay, preferably I wouldn't have wanted him back, because I just think a couple of reasons. Coming back doesn't always work. The way you left has left a bitter taste. We don't need any distractions. We want to go forward, strengthen, be strong, and win cups, trophies, and leagues. And I felt this would be a distraction. But he's back, and you have to look at the fact that he is an elite manager. Take away any other thoughts you might have. He is an elite manager. And I can't believe, and I've said this a couple of times on this show just now, I can't believe he will come back under the same regime as it was last time. He has to have been told, there's money there, you'll sign your guys. I can't believe it's any other way. If I'm wrong here, then I've totally lost my faith in Brendan Rodgers, let me tell you.
I mean, I think if you're wrong, he'll be going in February again, I would imagine. So, you know.
Well, that's very much ties in with...
It doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't
make any sense. No, it doesn't.
That ties in with this, which is Stephen's social media choice of the week. Matt, we do this where we have a little look at what people pick out of Twitter. This is from Ken. Stephen, do you want to talk us through it? Stephen?
Perhaps not.
I'm going to press play.
Yeah.
That's what's important for us. If you're going to bring in any players, they have to be of real, genuine quality, but they also have to be able to enhance our group. Like I say, there's no point in us bringing in players that's just going to just add to the players that we already have. They have to really be able to make a genuine difference. But I always look to the young players here within in the academy as well. But of course, a club like Celtic with a status and the demands of who you always have to be looking outside as well. So that's something that's ongoing. But we have to bring in quality. That would be the message.
So that was the message back then, and it's the message today, Stephen.
Yeah, so that was an interview with Brendan from 5 years ago. And to be honest with you, when I first saw that interview, I thought it was maybe done a couple of days ago. It's very eerily similar to some of the rhetoric that's been coming out from the manager over the past few weeks and the last couple of months, in fact, about the need for quality signings. And I think, you know, as it mentioned in the tweet there, we ended up in that window signing, I think, Oliver Burke on loan and a couple of guys like Bayo and one other signing, I think, was it Shved? That was the window we signed him. So it ended up in disaster, that window, and Brendan was gone a few weeks later. So that's probably where the worry is for me about how things are going and how similar it is to when Brendan was last here.
Paul, do you want to jump in?
You can definitely draw comparisons with some of the the chat, you would hope that obviously that was coming to the end of his tenure, and you'd hope that he's just getting started this time around. So I agree with Stephen. It sounds a bit similar, but equally, I'm a bit more upbeat that, look, I've said this elsewhere, but not that I want, like, let's be clear, I don't want us to go with the squad we've got, but I think with the squad we've got, barring any catastrophes around injury, is probably strong enough to get League One, but we shouldn't be gambling on it with the amount of cash we've got available. It makes and what's the promised land at the other end? It just makes absolutely no sense to take that gamble. So I agree with what Matt was saying. It's tweaks to the squad, especially with players coming back from injury and stuff like that. We need to thin out the squad, get a smaller, sharper group. But yeah, 2 or 3 additions. And as I said, they don't even have to be permanent for now. I think a couple of good loans to get us over the line and then do proper business in the summer. Now, not everyone will agree with that, but you can't have perfection every time. So for me, it's get the job done between now and the summer and be working actively between now and then to land your proper targets in the summer. If that's what needs to happen, then so be it. For me, I don't think we'll get a new goalkeeper, first choice goalkeeper, but even signing a quality backup goalkeeper would be a good addition for me, because the thought of going in with Bain, if anything happens to Joe Hart, is horrifying. And
that's what you said before the Champions League. You were saying
I did, and I've said it on Twitter for the last couple of days. I had a long chat with 2 or 3 guys as I was waking up this morning, and guys in Scotland were going to bed. That even a second choice keeper is a good, solid second choice keeper is a good addition in this window, because Siegrist is pretty much gone. He's had a deal fall through, I think, in Switzerland or Austria, but he's checked out. His girlfriend's down here in Sydney. He doesn't want to be there. And Bain was only ever supposed to be a third choice keeper, and now he's our backup. We're one injury to Joe Hart away from potentially derailing the whole season. So a backup keeper is a really good signing in this window for me as well.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. There's this great myth that you have to spend 15 million to get a good player. You get a good player who's coming to the end of his contract. You don't have to pay very much for him, and you've still got the quality there. There must be loads of players worldwide that we can look at. I'm pretty sure, without knowing anything, because I don't have any inside knowledge, but I'm pretty sure that Celtic are working on deals just now. What are we? Just the 11th of January. So we've got another 21 days to 19 days to go.
20 days, yeah.
20 days.
It is.
So just keep the faith, and
absolutely.
That's what we've always done, and that's why
that's what we've always done. That's what we'll always do. Exactly. I said before you come on, Matt. I'm not overly concerned about it just now, but perhaps 2 weeks from now I'll have a different perspective on it. But let's see.
I like that T-shirt you're wearing there, Jerry.
Yes,
I put it on especially for you, Matt. I've got them all. I've got every one of them. So.
And Stephen, I've got to say, you've done the same thing as me. I'm obviously on the road in southern Spain. I've hung a jersey up behind me. Stephen's done the same with the old late 50s, early 60s jersey, which I must say, that's one of my favourites. I love that jersey. I always think of Pact Rerand when I see that jersey.
Jerry, do you want to tell us a bit more about the T-shirts? Jerry, you tell us a bit more about the T-shirt.
Go on, Jerry.
One of Matt's said. Actually, you know what? One of the things all the boys in Supporters Club always say to me is, Jerry, you've always got all the coolest T-shirts. I said, well, you can thank Matt McGlone for that, because that's who supplies them to me. So if you go on and alternative view, you go to
sorry, you don't need to punt it. It's fine.
you can buy a whole bunch of very nice T-shirts. In fact, time that I met Matt in Herities, we were going to the game. I'm in Herities with my Sing Tim's flag, and Matt was there handing out T-shirts to movie stars, and I'm like, there, I've got that one, and I've got that one, and I've got that one. So
that's right, and I think he managed to get it back. Tony Curran, it was
Tony Curran, and your other man as well.
It was Tony, and there was Cal McInnes.
That's it. Yeah, Cal McInnes, and we got a nice photograph that we've had on here before outside the pub with the 4 of us with a flag. So
yeah, Cal is I see Cal quite a lot after games. We walk down London Road, down the Gallagate after the games, and just because of a couple of health things, I've got to do a lot of walking, and I walk up from the city centre up to the East End and back, and I always bump into Cal in the Hale and Jesse's pub, which is just down into the Gallagate there. A really strange thing, Tony Curran I'd met Tony once before somewhere, and we'd swapped numbers, and really nice guy, and I bumped into him again that day. In fact, I think that Saturday that we were there, or was it Sunday, I can't remember. Scotland had played on the Wednesday before, and I had met Tony Curran in Heritage, and he was going to the Scotland game, and he had a 70s Scotland jersey on. I don't know if he got it off one of the players, it was a cracker. And then he said he was coming in, and I said, I'll bring in a couple of my shirts and so on. So he goes, I'll be back to America, obviously, and never see him again. And then about the last April or May, I'm walking up through the Gallagate, just through the barras. And I get into this shop to get a bottle of water, and just as I cross over, a car comes down and just doesn't quite miss me, but I did jump out of the way a wee bit, and sitting in the back of this car's Tony Curran. He goes, Matt McGlone. He goes, Tony Curran, what are you doing here? So it's amazing people you bump into in a car, just coming out a side street. It was a taxi. So he says, come on board. And so I had to give up my last 3,000 steps, I think, and got a taxi up to Celtic Park.
Very good.
So I'm over here doing 20,000 steps a day.
Good man.
Doing all the right things in life.
Good. Well, we were talking about that earlier on as well. Just try to be healthy in January. Paul and I are I'm off the grog until Easter, so training every day. So I'll hopefully be a shadow of my former self by the time we get to Good Friday. So,
well, it's you've got to be careful. I was probably pretty reckless about my health. I think I probably had a kind of haphazard style about my life, which I always try to not have, but it always seemed to be the way I was made. And I always found it quite difficult to change. And obviously, I got a big fright when I had a heart attack 4 years ago. And that's the reason I'm out here, just to tidy things up a bit and reset a few health things. In fact, today, this is the 11th, isn't it? It was 4 years ago this very day, January 11th, 2020, I had my heart attack this very day.
Wow.
That's quite weird. We're actually talking about health things, and I'm actually on doing this.
Yeah. And tomorrow I get my results I did a CT scan, of the calcium score, just to see what state my heart is in. So I'm going to find out that tomorrow.
So you never know, Matt. There might be a more permanent position for you on this group if Gav doesn't get the results.
We need a new host.
No, we have to have Gav. I've seen Gav in quite a few shows. Gav's the man.
He is.
So best of luck, Gav, with your results there. Hope everything pans out good.
Yeah, well, it's not a checkup because there's anything particularly going on. It's just to know, to gather the information. So should be grand. Well, let's move on to Jerry's social media choice. You can talk us through this, Jerry.
I wanted to say I do think this is not a very good look around Rangers, that the two refs that the club and its supporters appear to detest most are Kevin Clancy and Willie Collum. I mean, I think Rangers have moved on a lot in some ways at least, and I sincerely hope there is none of the quotes bad old ways about their contempt for these two referees. I hope religion has nothing to do with this. And in fact, I cannot believe that either James Bisgrove or John Bennett are that way inclined in any way. I cannot believe that. But a big section of the Rangers fan base, I can't speak for them. I just don't think it's a very good look at all.
Again, in fairness,
and also I must say, Andrew, I'm actually choosing my words carefully here because I don't want to say anything that impugns Rangers. I just think it doesn't look good. That's my concern.
Yeah, as I say, in Keith's column today, he actually quite bravely says with Willie Collum, it appears personal and it appears related to the fact he's a Roman Catholic. No, I would desperately hope not. I would desperately hope not.
Well, there's a can of worms for us to open up when we're minutes away from closing the show. But Jerry, take it away.
I actually just laughed as Phil obviously did when he heard that. I mean, Graham Spears, at least it's, out of all the, I guess, mainstream media, what he would have been mainstream media, Graham Spears throughout his career has probably been more even-handed than most of them. But I just thought that here's another thing that's going to get the knuckle draggers in yet another meltdown that type of stuff's been discussed. I mean, absolutely no surprise that Willie Collum and Kevin Clancy are the hate. I'm sure come the 12th of July there'll be, well, if there hasn't been already, Willie Collum and Kevin Clancy dummies been burned on the bonfires. So again, we've said this on previous shows as well. I think the Rangers, the club, and or the Rangers, sorry, the club, Sevco, and their supporters are just opening a massive can of worms, and ultimately governance and more governance around the associations that run Scottish football can only be beneficial, hopefully, or I think can only be beneficial ultimately to Celtic. So more transparency from the governing bodies would be good. But I did think it was a tad ironic that you've got these people debating. Surely it's not because these two gentlemen are Roman Catholics. Well, surely it is.
Well, I think
Anybody
it is.
Else?
Let's face it.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I mean, they can gloss it over here, but I live in Glasgow, and I've always lived in Glasgow, and I know the city inside out, and I know the people's feelings, and that's exactly what it is. They can dress it up any way they want and paint it out. But the strange thing is, I was watching this all unfold. When I was at the game, I didn't see the handball. Everything happened so quick, and it seemed to me as he was swinging around. Anyway, But the strange thing is, look at the amount of times we could have complained about things and went on about things, but all we have done is mention them as incidents during the game. We haven't carried it forward into some mindless campaign of individuals. This is a hunting down of officials. That's what this is. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we've never engaged in that. Do you remember the double handball of Goldson last season at Ibrox? Yeah, it was mentioned and spoken about, but it was never went on about it, and we demanded the meetings with the SFA, and Rangers get a meeting with the SFA, and they're told what was said in the audio between each other. Then they come out of that meeting and give away a confidence and say this was said, and then the SFA actually came out with quite a good statement of saying how the procedure works and what Rangers said wasn't what happened at the meeting. I mean, it's shabby, it's tawdry, it just goes from bad to worse. Where's the word class in all of this? It's missing.
It's prefixed by nay.
Exactly.
Nay class.
It's missing. And I know our fans, and myself included, we go on about it and we say, well, we should make a bigger thing of this. We should protest better. But see, if by protesting higher and louder, and it descends into a personal witch hunt, then I wouldn't want to be part of that. I think we have to obviously protest, but we have to do it properly and concise and directed. And, I'm sure inside Celtic Park, there must be a book of stats of all the decisions that went against us. Willie Collum gave a penalty against us when he wasn't even looking at the situation. Do you remember that one?
Yep, absolutely. Of course, absolutely.
He's looking at the North Stand, and an incident happened at the South Stand. And he's turning around towards the South Stand and just, I'll give him a penalty. I mean, if there was ever a time for us to turn around and say, what's going on here? It was then, but...
I think he got taken off the reading it since Francis Xavier that Sunday, though, Matt. So he was like, you're not doing the first reading, Willie, this weekend.
Well, see, here's the thing. I saw that and I thought to myself, why not? Why shouldn't he do that? That's his religion. Why shouldn't he do it? Why be bullied and put down by people that are not into what you believe in? That's the guy's beliefs, and he 100% should have done that. But again, because we maybe deal with small minds here, they can't see beyond the fact, oh, he's this or he's that, or he's the next thing. I'd be pretty sure if you looked at all the stats, Willie Collins gave worse decisions against Celtic than he has Rangers over the course.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Willie Collins has been reading at that on a reading rota in that chapel for over a decade now. So it's not, it's not new.
So see if you didn't do that, if you didn't do it and you allowed them to cower you, that would be wrong. So listen, see all the environments you guys live in, it just doesn't happen over there.
No, we're
and I think Spears is given an easy out there to Bisgrove and Bennett by saying, oh, he's quite sure that religion doesn't matter to them. Now, whether they personally have an issue with Collins or Clancy's religion, I don't know, but they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how to whip up their base. And Rangers administrations of the past have done it as well with orange strips and all the rest of it, and armed forces days and this. They're playing to their base and they know exactly what they're doing. And I don't think it's right to just absolve them of any blame, because this is the underbelly of Scottish society we're talking about here. This is the racism that just won't speak its name and it remains hidden. And as you rightly say, Matt, we're all out of it here. And probably very glad to be in that situation.
No, I've always thought, that people who have, ventured to further afield, they're leaving all this rubbish behind, and I'm quite envious of you guys, that you can go away there, great your support Celtic from afar, that's fantastic. But you live in a completely different environment, which is great. And it's the nature of the beast here. I don't think any one of the five of us is ever going to change it. But we can certainly speak about it and never be covered by it.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like a good spot.
And God bless JP too for being at Bellahouston Park, because that's apparently what started it all, right? So I was there that day. So
yeah, well, I'm reading that he gave the instruction that day, did he not?
Exactly. I heard it, Matt. I heard it.
Took a bit of a while to come through, right enough.
I heard it as well. I was there. I heard it. My referee's application went in the next day.
Yeah, I live quite near there actually, and they took some trees down, if you remember, to allow the crowd in. And somebody I knew nearby, who not of a Celtic persuasion, a sort of neighbour, said to me, "They put the trees back up." I said, "You probably plant new ones, Why are you taking them down for the Pope?" Oh.
Well, look, gents, we've been going on now for well beyond the norm. If ever there was a time and a guest for that to happen with, it's Matt McGlone. So we should have wrapped it up in an hour. It's almost an hour and 20. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think we'd probably all like to say thanks a lot, Matt, for coming today. It's been amazing. And thanks for your contribution, as Stephen said earlier, everything you did 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Lovely to meet all you guys. And obviously, I know you, Gav, on Twitter. I'll get in touch with Stephen and Paul via Twitter and stay in touch, etc. But I have to say, just in closing, that this wouldn't have been achieved without all the guys in Celts For Change. David Cunningham, Brendan Sweeney, John Thompson and Colin Duncan. Each man was a soldier. They stuck to the task. They put up with the grief and they stuck with it. And quite often they're not mentioned, and I think it's only right that they are mentioned. Everybody did an equal amount of work.
For sure.
Well said.
God bless you all.
Well
God bless you all. Hopefully get a pint with you before the season's out, Matt.
Well, Jerry, we don't have to make an arrangement. We just bump into each other.
Exactly.
All right, guys. All the best to y'all. Take it easy.
Bye.
All the best, Matt. Take care.
Cheers.